Okay, shall we kick things off then? So, hi everyone, welcome to this. Oh, I just realized I never changed the August to October in the slides. I've just seen that. It's been staring at me for like 5 minutes and I've only just realized. Just pretend that says October on the slide. But this is the October edition, of course, of our Tableau Prep user group. You're joined by me and Jack today as the hosts for this event. And I do have some sad news to share at the top of the meeting, just to say that one of our speakers had to pull out today for a family emergency. So sending all best wishes to him and his family. But we do still have one of our speakers, so we'll enjoy speaking to him today. So let's take a look. I've just seen a funny comment there about it being Oktoberfest. I did actually go to Oktoberfest at the weekend, so that's probably still the after effects of that. So just a reminder of your leaders here for the prep user group. You've got myself and Jack, as well as Jared Flores. So we kind of coordinate things here. So if you're interested, in fact, in speaking at an event, then we're definitely the ones to speak to, or in fact, you can fill out a Google form to register your interest in that. We're currently in the process of kind of planning what we're going to do for next year. So a really great time to kind of get some exciting things lined up in your diary for next year, some exciting opportunities to speak. We generally run the events every even month of the year, so February, April, so on and so forth. We've tried this year alternating between sort of EMEA US friendly hours and US APAC friendly hours. So we think that's gone quite well. We'll probably continue that. So kind of February will be the EMEA time zone. So February, then June, then October. So if any of those sound like something you want to get ahead of yourself for, then let us know. And if you're new here, then again, welcome. We have a Slack channel where it has started back up again, so that's all good. Cool. So before we hand over to our speaker, we don't really have too many prep specific announcements for this user group. With 24.3, there kind of weren't any new releases for us to talk about. So instead, we'll kind of talk about what's going on in a bit more the general Tableau world. So if you are in EMEA, then hopefully you've heard about DataFam Europe, and you're planning on attending that. So if you haven't heard about it before, it's kind of like a mini Tableau conference in Europe. We've got 2 days of kind of lots of talks going on, and it's in London this year, right by St. Paul's. If anyone's attending, then let us know in the comments. One of the exciting things that I know that's going on is that Prep and Data and Workout Wednesday will be running a live session. So always fun to get to do those together in person and kind of see those communities come together. So please do come get involved, come say hi if you are around for those. And then it's obviously at the moment the month of Iron Viz submissions. So you've got until the 31st of October to do that. So a whole week basically. So if you are still on the fence about participating, then maybe we can help convince you, talk you into it. So if you haven't heard of Iron Viz before, it's kind of, the ultimate visualization competition. The theme this year being entertainment. So you just need to create a viz that is in some way themed around entertainment, and submit it by the 31st, basically. The incentives for doing so, you kind of get all these LinkedIn badges featured in the online gallery, you get some scores and feedback from the judges if you want them. If you get into the top 10, then you get recognition for that and you get $200 swag voucher. Nice. And then if you're in the top 3, you even get to go to Tableau conference next year and present on stage. And the prizes for that are pretty decent, getting some cash prize and some donations to charity as well. So pretty cool stuff. So if you are interested in participating in that, then all you need to do is have Tableau Desktop, Tableau Public, get some data, make a viz, and submit it. Cool. So by the 31st of October 2024. Got a week to get that done. And it's funny that we were mentioning all about Iron Viz. I included this slide actually because I realized that me and Lorna and Will are in it, and I was excited. But also one of our speakers is in it, of course, because we've got our speaker as the winner of Iron Viz this year. We've got Chris coming to talk to us because it's not all about the final snazzy dashboard. It's all about kind of the data that you have to prepare to get it to that snazzy dashboard stage. So I don't want to steal Chris's thunder at all, but Chris, are you able to take over?
Absolutely. Thank you. I will bring up my slides. Can you see those okay?
Yeah, that's sharing fine for me.
Awesome. So I'll do a quick intro of who I am. I'm Chris. I live just about half an hour north of Edinburgh in Scotland, and something I like to do outside of data is wood turning. So I've recently started this. There are a couple of projects on there that I've done quite recently. It's been really nice to kind of start something outside of kind of data and away from a screen. But coming back to data, I work for JLL as a senior BI analyst on one of their client accounts. So I spend all day, every day, turning data into insights, helping them solve business problems, and really using Tableau to do that. I'm also a Tableau public ambassador. I co-lead the Scotland Tableau user group, and as Jenny mentioned, I won Iron Viz this year. I also have a blog turned website at westlakeanalytics.com where I try and post kind of tips and tricks and tutorials and stuff every couple of weeks. So do go and have a look at that after this if you're interested. So I want to take you back to one morning in January this year where I woke up to an email on my phone. And this email had the subject heading of "Congratulations, you're a finalist in the 2024 Iron Viz competition." And it blew my mind. It was something that I never thought would happen. It was the 5th time that I'd entered Iron Viz, and it had kind of crossed my mind that maybe this would be a cool thing to happen, but I'd never really thought that it would be possible. So I know that Jenny touched on this in the intro, but just wanted to go through what Iron Viz actually is. So each year there's a global qualifier contest with a theme given by Tableau. Last year there were about 200 entries, from which Tableau picked 300 finalists. Three finalists, not 300. And the prize for getting into the final is every data-driven introvert's dream to be on that stage at the front of that picture, in front of about 7,000 people, using a dataset provided by Tableau to build a dashboard in 20 minutes. Because doing anything in front of 7,000 people isn't hard enough. You have to have this kind of a time limit on it. So my initial reaction was something like this. I was super excited. I think I shouted so loud my wife thought that someone had died, which isn't quite the reaction I was looking for. But over the next kind of couple of days, the realization of what was actually ahead of me started to set in, and my face turned to something a little bit more like this. And some of the things going through my head were, that's a pretty big audience. I think up until this point, the biggest audience I'd ever stood in front of was when I used to do drama in high school, and I was in a play and we had about 200 people turn up to watch it. And since then, the biggest in-person audience was probably about 50 people. So going from 50 to 7,000 is a massive jump, and I didn't really know how I was going to cope with that. The next concern that I had was this dashboard that I build has to be pretty good. It's going to be seen by 7,000 people as I build it, and then however many people are watching at home, and then however many people look at it afterwards as well. It was going on Tableau Public, and it was certainly not going to just get forgotten about. And then there's the added pressure of the 20-minute time limit. So I knew that the preparation would be key here. I needed to know exactly what I was building, how I was going to build it, and really what the data that sat behind that would look like. Because if I had a poorly designed and structured data set, it would be really easy for that dashboard to just fall apart in those 20 minutes of building. I'm not a master of data preparation at all. At work, we use Alteryx, which is a really great tool, but for every kind of passion project and other Tableau project that I've done, including my entry to the Iron Viz competition, I've used Excel. It's a long and tedious way to do things, but it's really where my comfort zone was and where I kind of find the most enjoyment in doing these things. But for the final, it was stipulated that we had to use Tableau Prep. I'd touched Tableau Prep once or twice before this, but never really gotten that deep into it. I knew that it was something that I could pick up, but with the pressure of everything else that was going on, kind of having to come up with this dashboard and all the rest of it, it felt like a lot to be trying to learn a completely new tool. So I went and sat on a swing and thought, can I just use the data as it is? Do I really need to do any preparation with it before taking it into Tableau? We were sent the data source about a month before the final itself to help us and give us some time to prepare what we were going to build. And when that data arrived, it looked something like this. It was the data that now sits behind the IMDb TV challenge that Tableau are co-hosting with IMDb. And there were 7 tables in this structured data source, and you can see on this image as well, those data tables aren't small. So when I went into sheet 1, it took a long time to load. And each time I clicked on anything, it was taking 20, 30 seconds to just respond. And I knew that that wasn't feasible for a build that I had to do in 20 minutes. 30 seconds of just waiting is a really long time. So not doing any data prep just wasn't an option. I decided to approach this in a very kind of overarching way, to look through the list of fields and only keep the ones that I needed, and also to only keep the top 250 most voted for shows on the IMDb platform. So in I went to Tableau Prep. This fairly simple flow just takes those top 250 shows and also removes all of the fields that I wasn't going to be needing. This just shows 2 of those tables. There was an equivalent flow for the others. One thing that I found in this kind of first exploration of prep was that a lot of the calculations work very much like they do in Tableau, but the filters are a little bit trickier. When I clicked on the filter data button, I really expected it to pop up as a filter would in Tableau desktop, but it didn't. And most of this I found okay, just kind of writing a true-false style calculation was fine, but when it got to the ordering and trying to find the top 250, I struggled a bit. But there's an amazing community out there, and I was able to find the answers that I needed. So with this in hand, I had a smaller data set that I was able to play around with a bit more in Tableau. And over the couple of weeks that followed, I managed to formulate a first view of the dashboard that I wanted to build. So let's jump in here and see what this actually looked like as to what I was setting myself up to build in the final. What you see on this first page is a scatter plot with those 250 most voted for shows. They're positioned by the series rating across the bottom, and at the moment, number of votes. You can change this to look at number of seasons, number of episodes, year running, or that's the size, or just have them all sized the same. So if we position them by the number of votes, and we can also zoom in on kind of the most voted for, or the highest ranked shows. We can from there pick a TV show that we want to focus on. let's look at the office. From there, you can then click this button down here, which changes a parameter in the background of the viz to take us to the next page. Here you see every episode in the office positioned by its average rating. So you can see the episodes that rated the lowest and also the ones that rated the highest. On stage in my presentation of this, I raised the point that the average rating in the final 2 seasons dropped significantly and wondered if there was anything in the cast that could help us work out why. Moving on to the next page, you see a list of the cast members that feature the most in this show. By hovering on them, you can see which episodes they feature in, and when we hover on Steve Carell, who plays Michael Scott, we see that he completely disappears at the end of season 7. Posing another question to the audience, I then went on to find out where Steve Carell went after The Office. I used the rest of the episode data that was supplied via IMDb to look at the other episodes in TV that Steve Carell featured in throughout all of TV history. And you see here, it's very dominated by The Office, and there's a big gap. We were also given awards data, which we can use in the next step to try and kind of plug that gap and see what Steve Carell was doing in his career during those years. And we can see that there's a significant number of films that he was nominated for awards for, which helps us kind of close that circle and gives us a fully comprehensive view. Once we reach this point, we can click the button again and return to the start and pick any of those other 249 shows to focus on. So I was really happy to have something of an idea of what I wanted to build, but there were going to be some issues doing this in 20 minutes, given what I had so far. I had to build the relational data model within the 20 minutes. So step 1 of that time was bringing in data to Tableau, and I had 5 tables in that data source that I needed to create. There were also 7 parameters, 74 calculated fields, 12 sheets, 11 dashboard actions, and thankfully only 1 dashboard. 20 minutes? That's just not going to happen. So I started by focusing on one of these points, the calculated fields, because I thought it would be really easy to take lots of the calculations and push them back into Tableau prep. When I did this, my Tableau prep flows kind of exploded a little bit more. So this is another section of the prep flows. This one looking at the radial chart. So that curved chart that shows you all of the episodes. They're kind of plotted on an XY coordinate for each of them to give you that essentially map of the show. There were loads of calculations that I could pull back into this, and ultimately it left me only needing to create the make point calculations in Tableau Desktop to tie my X and Y coordinates together for those maps. And then I also needed to create anything related to parameters. So this left me with 29 calculations instead of 74, which was a much better number. With this, I felt like I'd used Tableau prep as much as I needed to. So I thought I'd test how close I was to the 20 minutes. I didn't expect to get it, but I thought there'd be no harm in seeing how far off I was. So I opened Tableau, started a timer, and decided I wasn't going to look at the time at all. I'd just see what it said when I finished. 1 hour, 1 minute, and 58 seconds later, I felt my confidence somewhat dented. There was a massive hill to climb. Did I need to cut this dashboard back, take out sections, or was there enough that I could do, again, with Tableau prep, that would bring that down by the 42 minutes that it needed to? I looked at that list and thought, yeah, 5 tables is a lot, and that's a big data model to try and build in a time-pressured situation. So my workflow again exploded, but became somewhat neater this time, as I managed to form all of those 5 tables into one. So what you see in here is the kind of top section is picking out those 250 most voted for shows, and eventually the fields that would just be used for the scatter plot. It then feeds into the radial chart and creates all the fields using that orange section at the bottom of the workflow. All the fields that come out of there are used in that radial chart. And the other section in the middle is the cast members and their rewards. So with this, I felt a lot more comfortable. I knew that creating that data source would take a lot less time, and hopefully everything would just run a little bit smoother. So back into Tableau with a timed attempt number 2. 52 minutes and 52 seconds, so 10 minutes were cut off, but there was still a lot going on. I sat down with my supervisor, who was there to help me and support me through this journey, and we realized that there was a lot of formatting that I was doing within the dashboard of the data that could perhaps be taken outside. Just look at this tooltip on that scatter plot on the home page. There's a field that I had to bring into the tooltip for the name of the show. There was then another field for the description of the show, and then I had to count the number of episodes, count the number of seasons, bring in the start year and the end year of the show, work out the average rating, and the number of votes that made up that rating. That's 8 different fields that I had to bring in, and 6 fields that I had to format because they're numerical fields. So by default, the 188 was coming through as 188.0. The 2005 had a comma separator because it was over 1,000. And things like that were just eating away at my time. I thought, going back into Tableau Prep, that I'd be able to simplify this. And I could. I knew what data needed to go into that tooltip. So why not just build the tooltip in Tableau Prep? Taking each of those fields into one calculated field, I was able to produce just this one series details tooltip field that I could bring in with one click in Tableau Desktop. And sure enough, the tooltip in the final dashboard looks like this. It's a really nice way to get that much information in without having kind of too much clutter and too much to do once you get to Tableau Desktop. So another timed attempt. Was that enough? Not quite, but it made a really big difference in that time. I was now under half an hour, and I think I had about a week to go until the final, and I felt really confident at this point. But thinking through it more and looking at what past finalists had done in their final entries, I realized that there was a step further that I could take this, which is possibly a step that's not useful in day-to-day use of data, but is certainly useful for something like this. And that was renaming all of the fields. So I used a naming convention that would tell me what fields I needed to use on which sheet and where I needed to put them. So you can see here, that top one in that screenshot, S3, related to the radial chart. It was on the 4th level of that chart, which was created using map layers. It was the second step that I needed to do, the second pill that I needed to pull on to that layer, and it had to go onto the path box on the marks card. This felt a little bit like cheating, but it was what I needed to do, and ultimately nobody was going to see the back end of this. I just needed to get that dashboard built in a really quick time. After a lot more attempts, I finally managed to get below that 20-minute mark. And I looked back over what I'd done, and I realized that there was a lot here that I could take beyond Iron Viz into my other work as well. So why use Tableau Prep, and what have been the benefits of using it here? The first one was the improved workbook efficiency. When I first opened that initial workbook, every click took 20-30 seconds to actually do anything. Whereas with these changes, everything was instant. I didn't need to wait for anything to load, it was just there. The next thing was more robust data. By doing all of the calculations in the back end, I wasn't at risk of copying something incorrectly. I wasn't going to format something wrong. I wasn't going to use a sum instead of an average. So the data came through perfectly every time I built it. And the final thing, build faster in Tableau. It made it so much quicker, which for something like Iron Viz is really important. Hopefully in your day job and in your use of Tableau and Tableau Prep, you don't need to build something in 20 minutes. And even if you can, I'd strongly suggest that you don't let on to your employer that you can do that, because it does create a few issues for you time-wise going forward. So thanks for listening to that. Hope you found it interesting and useful. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter and check out my website.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. That was really, yeah, I can't believe how much that you had to kind of iterate through, and that you only had a month to do it beforehand. I didn't know that beforehand.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah, no, really cool. So yeah, if you do have questions for Chris, then please do drop them in the chat. I found it really interesting as well, what you were saying about the filtering in prep and kind of clicking on that button and expecting it to look like Tableau. Yeah, it's one of those things that probably I've gotten really used to. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, it just gives you that calculation thing. But no, it probably would be nicer if it was a bit more visual, like Tableau Desktop.
Yeah, I think even comparing that to something like Ultrix, where the button just looks different and the whole interface is a little bit different, it's kind of comfortable because you know what a Tableau calculation box looks like and what that feels like. But yeah, I did expect it to come out a bit different.
Yeah, yeah. There are some ways of, like, if you look at an individual field, say it's a string field, you can like still have like a tick box of which ones you want to keep. But
Okay.
you don't necessarily know to click there unless you know.
Completely.
So
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, I love the color coordination of some of your workflows there as well. Like, yeah, I'm surprised it didn't look more chaotic, given that it was your first time using it.
There was a lot of tidying up at the end. Yeah, when I first looked back over the flows that I'd created, nothing was like in a straight line. It was just all over everywhere. So yeah, trying to unpick today what had happened in the previous versions. I had no idea what I was doing, but it seemed to work. So
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's very documentation for your future self, super important.
definitely.
Always. Yeah, can you imagine if you'd had to do all that prep in just Excel?
Yeah, that wouldn't have been fun. Kind of having done radials and stuff with Excel, it does get messy
wow.
very quickly. And I think, yeah, now that I know that there's a better tool that I can use, it's going to go there a lot quicker in the future.
Yeah, definitely. And then I think I had one other question that I scribbled down. Oh no, it was just a comment. I think it was really cool to see, like, all the calculations kind of moving back didn't save you that much time. Obviously, probably the efficiency of the workbook, probably it did save you time somehow. But then moving the formatting back, like, that's definitely not something that you would think about doing a lot of the time in day-to-day. So super cool to see.
Definitely.
Cool. John just had a comment around Tableau Prep, wishing it was more like desktop with having other calculations combined with LODs. That is very frustrating. Yeah, if you want to do an LOD, it has to be separate first, and then you can do something to it afterwards. But that does get annoying.
Took me a while to get my head around as well.
Yeah, it also annoys me. Probably shouldn't be complaining about prep at the moment, given our audience, but it does annoy me when you're kind of writing that calculation and it's got a red line under it until you finish the calculation. And you're like, oh, so it was fine. Okay. Got a question from Joshua around, will prep ever have make point included? I think that it's something that the devs at Tableau Prep have been thinking about for a while, having spatial in Tableau Prep. It kind of gets hinted at every now and then at Tableau conferences, but I haven't heard any solid plans for when that might come out. But hopefully, it'd be very cool.
It would. I was surprised that it wasn't in there, but
Hmm.
it didn't affect me too much.
Yeah, it could have probably helped you save a few seconds.
Completely.
Cool. I think that there aren't any more questions. Jack, did you have any additional comments to make before we wrap up?
I didn't. I mean, well, one thing I was actually going to ask, they're pretty massive prep flows. How did you find the like performance and stability whilst you were building them?
It struggled. One of the reasons that I had kind of the multiple files to begin with was because prep just couldn't handle doing it all in one go. In the end, I needed to just kind of leave it running for a couple of hours to get there. And I think the input on the series stuff was a cut down version of that series data. So it was already just the 250 shows. But I was quite impressed with how it handled it.
Yeah, I guess if you're used to using Ultrex as well, you're used to having that run button and kind of nothing happens when you haven't hit the run button. Whereas, yeah, otherwise it's constantly flowing through in prep, right?
Completely. Yeah.
Cool. One quick question there about, can we embed SQL into Tableau server? I'm not quite sure what your use case is there, but you can always write SQL in a prep input and then publish that to Tableau server if that's something you're interested in doing. But yeah, feel free to connect with us offline if you want to discuss that further. Cool. So yeah, thank you very much for your time today, Chris. Thanks for presenting at our user group. And yeah, I think if that's everything, I think we'll wrap it up there.